Thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar today, hosted by Appian, on transforming work and the customer experience with dynamic case management. My name is Malcolm Ross with Appian Corporation. I'll be moderating today's panel with two really exciting speakers. But before we get into the content of the presentations for today, I want to set the tone a little bit about what we mean by customer experience and what we mean by dynamic case management. Well, let's think about customer experience for a second. You know, when I build a product offering, I often want to create the transaction between the product I want to bring to market and the customers purchasing and enjoying that product as seamless as possible. It's that path, that journey that we want to define to get our products to market as quickly as possible. And when we think about the challenges, though, of today, it's not as simple as the straight path that we see right here. You know, sometimes the path between our intent of an organization and the customer experience is much more complex. It's a twisting, winding world of digital media and social networking and ways of accessing products. And of course, there's 100 other competitive products you're out there trying to you're trying to compete against as you bring your own product to market. So what we want to talk about today is methods and techniques for trying to tackle this customer experience problem. When you think about all the digital mediums, the digital channels that people have to connect with your organization, how do I route effectively my operators, my sales executives, my service request operators to a path that's long to see all the possible paths and guide that customer from one point to another. And in this context, it's very similar to thinking of like a mapping software and all the possible paths that I can take to get from one destination to another. And how do I guide the person through all those paths to get the outcome that I want? Now, at the core of this, I like to talk about this in three fundamental areas. First is people. Many times it's about organizing the people across your processes as well as the customer interaction themselves and keep in perspective the needs of each one of those customers or the internal operators. So a customer is going to access you through multiple channels. They're going to interact with you through all those channels, understanding their needs of that customer and how they want to have that digital and non-digital experiences through your business processes. And of course, when you think about the sales executives and the business operators, they also need to take in that personal perspective of those people and how we're going to deliver effective solutions through things like case management for them. Now, as you start to take those perspectives of all the needs of the people, you also want to talk about the processes that we have in place. What are the channels that I'm going to think about and the steps that need to be followed for a customer to experience my product offering? Mapping out those processes and understanding all the dynamic possibilities interaction with them is also a fundamental aspect of case management. And as I build up all those processes and people connections, I'm going to generate lots of data. I have data about all my customers and how I want to do, say, targeted marketing campaigns or customer service request history or order history information and all the possible data brought together that is often siloed across different areas of your entire department or the entire world. How do I get a comprehensive view of what exactly the customer journey is? So to set that tone, I'm really excited to introduce our two speakers for today. First up, we have Craig Clair, who's a Vice President, Principal Analyst for Forrester Research. Now, Craig serves as the Enterprise Architecture and Business Process Professionals at Forrester. Now, he's a really well-recognized expert in helping companies transform from manual and analog-based processes to mobile, digital, and the cognitive world that we experience today. And of course, Craig also delivered Forrester's Research series on business agility, outlining market, organizational, and process agility dimensions. Followed by Craig's presentation, we're going to have Matt Richard, who's the Chief Information Officer for the Labor's International Union of North America. Now, LIUNA, as they're better known for, is an organization headquartered in Washington, D.C. that serves approximately 500,000 members across the United States and Canada. Now, Matt specifically led the effort to modernize legacy systems and reduce infrastructure spending to standardize the IT resources of the Washington, D.C. headquarters and their 9 regional offices. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Craig first for this exciting content on the customer experience and dynamic case management. Craig, off to you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much for that great introduction and those opening remarks, which I think set the tone very nicely. I'm going to go into some depth here on case management, what it is, and how it can really help you. So I'm going to jump right into it. Hopefully, I know on these events you have a mixture of those that are coming into it for the first time, others that have been wrestling with it. So I'll try to find a nice balance. But let's start with the age of the customer, and this is a conversation been going on in the industry for quite a while. This is Forrester's particular explanation of it. We talk about how basically the power of information has shifted to the customer from the institution, and that's due to the things that you have in your pocket, smartphones and social media and so forth. So, the way our parents bought a car, last generation, they went to the one dealership in town that had 90% of the information. Today, we spend 11 and a half hours online before we go into a dealership. And even then, we didn't want to go in the dealership. So this power shift has created, this emphasis on providing really new and transformative customer experiences. That's what we call the age of the customer. That's really what we're all about here. Now, if you listen to the big brands in the world, and we do ratings of the big brands. We have a customer experience index. This is some of the summary data by industry showing how well these companies are doing in providing customer experience. But the reality is that it's being overhyped. When you listen to these brands, you get the sense that they're all providing transformative customer experiences, and the customer is at the center of what they do and what they think. But this data tells a little different story. If you look at it, the average, which is that dot in the middle, customer experience, is just kind of okay in the higher ranked industries. The other thing you notice is, and of course you get down to federal government agencies that goes into the poor, very poor range. The other thing you notice about this data is the range is pretty significant. So you look at banks, for example, some are on the poor end, and some are doing a much better job. So what that tells you is that if you're a company in one of these industries, and independent of where you are, you probably have a lot of room to move. You have a lot of work to do to really raise that customer experience. And of course, what we're trying to get to is a really outstanding, a transformative customer experience, which again, I think there are very few, 2-3% of companies that are really providing that today. Now, the survey we did, I wanted to just let you know that it's very international in scope. You see the flags there. And if you look at the titles on the lower right, you get a sense of kind of who we talk to. So a lot of C-level executives, say between 10 and 15%. We have 28% vice presidents and 60% directors. So we're talking really to middle management and above. And the company size, I would say, is medium-sized businesses and up. That just gives you a sense of who we talk to. We basically did a survey, and when Forrester does, this is called sponsored research that we do for Appian. We make that clear that it's sponsored. But we have to do and need to do, and it's always good to do primary research so that the information and the results we get from the survey, are not just the opinion of analysts, but also come from actual respondents and survey. So anyway, this is a poll question. We're not going to blister you with tons of poll questions. I think we just have a couple. But here, if you wouldn't mind just taking a minute or a few seconds really to kind of tell us where you are in providing that seamless customer journey and tailoring your experience based on customer behavior. You're really providing that contextual understanding of the customer, their wants, their channel, their preferences, being able to provide that experience that we talked about earlier. So just take a second and pick one of these. Great. So I will assume that most of you have entered that, and I'm going to click ahead here, and let's see what the data has come back with and see if it is consistent with our data, which it's often a good thing when it is. So 13% really full capability. So that's actually pretty low, 55% in the middle, and really 24% have no capability. So that's pretty consistent. If you look at our chart that came from this survey, it's pretty consistent. It's a slightly different question and a slightly different organization of the results. But in our survey, greater than 2/5 of organizations are falling short, which is very consistent with the data that you just showed. So basically, we're not getting it done. here, which is consistent with the data we've shown and consistent with what we just heard from the poll. So we have more work to do in providing customers with that seamless experience, and that's where really we're setting the stage for talking about case management as a way to do that. And it's clearly important to companies. Prioritizing the customer journey is on the top of the priorities of a lot of companies. And of course, the semantics around understanding process. This is one of the interesting aspects of how the business process management and case management market has changed, is that it's less focused on the automation and underlying system-to-system integration kind of work, which is where it started, and much more focused now on the customer journey and how do we take the agility that we have in these platforms with their integration capability, with their design capability. How do we now really focus on understanding the journey of the customer? Customer journey, for example, if you're looking at it from an airline perspective, you get out of bed, you hit the alarm clock, you take a shower. It's looking at the customers getting in the cab, going to the airport. It's been horrible, by the way, with all these thunderstorms recently, but probably a bad example. But it's looking at every detail. It's looking at the emotion of the customer. It's looking at exactly what they're doing. It's looking at what they're thinking, and you do this exhaustive analysis of that. And then you take a look at the underlying systems and technologies and say, well, how can we make that better? So all of the process thinking, the process methodology has really changed to this concept of customer journey mapping, and so forth. And of course, at the end of the airline experience, you get dragged off the plane, but that's a different story. The thing that really makes case management interesting right now is that the future of work is really changing. I do a lot in another research track on the future of jobs, and I look at areas like robotics. Jobs are going to change. Roles are going to change. Today we have really what I call semi-knowledge workers that have, a much more varied set of tasks to do. And that's because we've reduced the number of people that can do things. We've either automated them out of existence or we've offshored them. So the people that are left, there's no one to forward the phone to. They have to do more. They have to understand more. So a lot of the investment in case management and the analytics that go hand in hand with it are really to provide this sort of information context that allows that person to do more. In previous years, they were highly automated. The software was controlling what they do. But now, because of the increased variety of tasks, they have to have more what we call runtime capability, and that's one of the distinguishing aspects of case. The case worker, as opposed to the production worker, has to think out of the box a little bit more. They have to be able to innovate around the process. There's no deterministic end of process. It is more a swirling set of activities that get to a particular business goal. So very, very different. So tomorrow's jobs, less structured, more ad hoc. Smart processes, exceptions are so much the norm now, that they're really not exceptions anymore. You talk to the managers of these large contact centers and you say, you must have had a really great decrease in calls because of all of the self-service automation, and now you have chatbots that are coming and so forth, so this must be great. And they go, well, no, we haven't been able to really reduce headcount because we have less calls. 70% are now handled with mobile and so forth, but the ones that come in are really hard. They take much longer to deal with. So what we're seeing is this movement from simple things to more complex things, and of course that's where case management really plays well. Now this is a chart that that's from the study that essentially emphasizes that ad hoc events are the greatest challenge in providing a seamless customer experience. There's a insurance company that I could never be a client of because they only insure the very high net worth. But they had an incident where one of their matrons were on a yacht having dinner and lost the pearl necklace overboard. All right. So they had case management and they dispatched a diving team to the harbor and located the necklace. Not only did they avoid the claim, but they created a memory that is so valuable, particularly in a set that's the kind of first world dinner conversation anecdote that'll be told forever. It's I like to say the margins now are in the memory. If you can create a memorable experience, the UPS guy that took the helicopter to deliver a package, that's a memorable experience. When you look at that via this triangle, you can kind of see this sort of reinforces what I've been saying, that a lot of the transactions have become commoditized and moved into that production area. That's not where companies can distinguish themselves. Banks can't distinguish themselves anymore with just doing transactions. Their margins on transactions have been eaten up by higher compliance costs. They distinguish themselves at the top of this pyramid, providing memorable experiences. And that's where case management. You see, BPM, business process management, really, made its hay in the production area. With basic bank account opening and credit card origination and so forth. That's really where BPM has traditionally played. And now with the addition of case management frameworks on top of BPM, on top of that platform, it's been able to move higher up here and really handle the more ad hoc capabilities. So probably should have had this slide earlier, but someone might ask, what is this dynamic case management? Well, I've kind of hinted at this, that if you think of traditional workflow in BPM, the first thing that comes to mind for most is a process map. You see tasks, you're dragging icons onto a canvas, you're connecting them, you're showing this serial process and maybe drilling down into a task to get a sub flow. But it's every aspect of the process is clearly articulated in the software. And really, to be direct, the goal of it was to keep workers, production workers, heads down and at higher RPMs. You wanted to control the human completely. So now think of this diagram in case management, which is this, it has the metaphor of the old yellow folder, but really think of that as being, in a repository that has dynamic elements to it. That includes metadata from the process. It includes information associations, data associations, connections to various repositories that are being pulled into the life cycle of the case. It has unstructured content. It has rules, embedded business rules that can help you do the right thing at the right time, at the right state in the case. All of these things are part of that case structure. So it is semi-structured, collaborative. So you have a collaboration layer, activity streams, that particularly for incident management, one of the areas is really, really important. So that's kind of the idea. 3 areas of case management have really grown to be distinguishable in terms of use cases, and these are just a smattering of the use cases in each. Incident management is it's become very, very strong area, particularly for things involving healthcare, for complaint management, quality management. So you have an adverse drug reaction in a clinical trial in the pharmaceutical industry. A case comes up, a portal is created, everybody is notified immediately. The operations people down at the process, manufacturing, the marketing people, the damage control people in PR, everyone is collaborating and going through various states that have been designed in the case management process. Investigative, no shortage of that, compliance and fraud, audit reports, IT governance. These are all areas that the frameworks for case, where you're moving through state transitions and you're providing different context at each state, the context that's appropriate to understand where that customer is, where that investigation is, where that incident is. That's the dynamic aspect of dynamic case management. And the biggest area is service requests, and there are just hundreds and hundreds of use cases here. I'm going to show you one, but loan origination, these are all can be looked at from the case perspective much better today than looking at it from the process management or the BPM or the workflow perspective, because that implies a certain lockdown of the process. And really what we want to do is open up the process for these kinds of drivers. You have and increased need to manage the costs and the rise of service requests like loans, claims, and benefits, right? That's clear. Automating and tracking inconsistent incidents that did not follow well-defined process. So that Japanese tanker that interacted, unfortunately, with one of our, carriers, one of our, destroyers. That's an incident. Was there an incident management case that was set up for that, for all the interaction and investigation that's going to go on there, to allow you to share that information with the international groups, having security across those groups? That's the kind of thing that a case management solution can do. So a lot of pressure on government agencies, a lot of movement from to citizen self-service and to case management, a lot more transparency, information, requests and so forth. So regulators, auditors, and litigants. So this is really just the real drivers for this this investment in case management. And this is from our study. It's effective. This is it's second to solution specialists in certain domains. So this one is really more targeted at the customer service area and the contact centers and that environment, which is the biggest area within service requests. And this is saying that by a slight margin, the specialist solutions that are not based on an agile platform like case management are actually more fit to purpose and a little bit better in that environment. I think that's what our data shows. I think that over time, that case management, because of the need for change, the integration capability, and the embedded predictive analytics and the ability to link with AI and predictive analytics, may shift that over time. But right now that's what it is. But dynamic case management is very, very effective in that customer environment there. Now, aligning DCM with the customer journey, is the top use case. So it seems that case management aligned with customer journey and aligned with customer service is the top use case across the respondents that we had. Maintenance and support, obviously, client onboarding is strong, but pretty significant. 71% is a pretty strongly distinguished from 58%. So clearly, customer service is the target area. And this was number 3 on the list. This is customer onboarding, which to me, onboarding a customer at anything beyond a highly transactional like P&C insurance should be considered a case. So if you're onboarding a business and you're a bank, business banking, that's a case. If you're boarding a customer for high net worth, if you're boarding a customer for retirement plans, and outside of financial services as well. So this is the classic chevron for that. But the real problem with these types of solutions today is that they don't have really strong business rules. These, in most organizations, these are functional silos. So the KYC is in the legal and compliance department. Deal configuration is somewhere buried in the back office. The sales engagement is, independent set of kind of cowboys. Sales engagement is not able to access the information that's in the back office on deal configuration. You wouldn't want them involved in that. So you end up with a very disjointed customer experience because the customer is viewing this as not different departments, but this is the aggregate view of the entire bank, in this case, that they have, and it's very disjointed. So you put a case management layer on top of all of the core systems that are involved here, the core systems for funding the account, the core system for registering the customer, the core system for the pricing and configuration component for asset-based lending in this case. And all of a sudden, you have the ability to do reporting for the customer across where they are status-wise going through this process. You have the ability for sales to see kind of where it is, maybe move it along. You have this, much better process. And think of know your customer here. You can create in the rules capability for case, you can create a standard KYC process across all of the products, say in a global bank, based on geography and product variation, so that you can actually have not be collecting the same information for the same business in 4 different locations because you have 12 different KYC processes. So it really helps you having an agile case orchestration layer with a good embedded rules, good APIs, good reporting, business intelligence kind of reporting really allows you to pull together this very, very disjointed process. Just a couple more slides for me. I just wanted to put case management in the sense of one of our more complicated graphics. This is a tech radar. Apologize for its complexity, but basically it shows different software areas, and you see case management there. That's on the upper slope. Dynamic case management, you see it right there. So it's basically, and you look at business process management, which is over to the right under in equilibrium, and you're basically saying, well, what's the difference between those two? Well, there's faster growth within case management right now. BPM is kind of in equilibrium, so it's a mature market. There's a lot of focus on, as you move to the customer, there's more focus on case management as opposed to BPM, which has a sense of the back office, a sense of automating structured processes. The point I wanted to make is that there are a lot of technologies here that are important in creating this customer experience on the operational side. There are things like robotic process automation that can relieve pain in the call center as well as in the back office. Electronic signature, moving from wet signature to digital signatures, is really great to eliminate paper in that last mile. You have electronic forms and new mobile forms approaches and so forth. So the whole process of digitization, the whole process of moving the important customer experience will lend itself to using a lot of these technologies. The key is that orchestration layer. That's the thing that pulls it all together. And you see case management being a very charging area in that scope. So a lot of companies have a lot of different case management applications. Now, some of them are solution specialists. Some of them are providers like Appian. Some of them are, I'll show you this other slide here that really talks about the different potential platforms for building case management. And it's gotten more confusing for companies over the years. And I get a lot of calls like this. We just have implemented ServiceNow, or we've just implemented Jira in IT service management, or we just have implemented Salesforce. So there's a domain-specific cloud momentum. And a lot of those clouds, which are domain-specific, they're not the mega clouds like Microsoft and Amazon, but they have some process tooling that would allow you to build a case. And they have, in the instance where you have a lot of the information for the case within that environment, that may make a lot of sense. So you have to, but that's now up there, in a sense, competing, with the solution specialists that will, have something very fit to purpose, but will not have the agility, and the more traditional BPM and case management platforms, which to me have the greatest process depth and the greatest business agility. The point is that you may have 5 or 6 options as a company to extend that case management process. So it's a very difficult decision as to where to make that happen. So I've talked about the components of this, and I'm getting a little bit towards the end of my time. But let me just say that composition tools are very important. In case management platforms, you have a concept of design time, which is your traditional design environment that you have for business, for the BPM platforms. But you also have a runtime environment. It's where you're building capabilities for the caseworker to innovate. So this might be giving them capability to create a subcase, to assign a case to another person, to be able to create a mini process that they want the subcase they created to go through. The ability to do research outside of the case and bring it into the case. So it's that flexibility that you need for that less structured process that distinguishes the composition capabilities of BPM from dynamic case management. And this is a couple more slides. BPM, I think, is an important component of DCM. And this was felt so in our survey as well. The basic automation engine under these platforms is still the BPM engine. Case is additions to the design time, to the runtime, to the composition environment. It's a framework that allows you to move state to state as opposed to task to task. It's actually some way to visualize, because the data associations you're making to provide that state transition and the context transition is very dependent on your ability to map those states to databases and structured repositories and unstructured repositories. So and to social media. So the ability to visualize what the connections you've made, to maintain them and to change them over time, is a real attribute of these case management platforms that's been evolving for the last few years. If you don't have an information-first approach to case, then you're probably going to miss the real benefits, which gets to context, which gets to providing that great customer experience. So using a single case management platform can improve things. So a lot of companies are moving in that direction. That's basically what that says. And in summary, in order to better serve customers, take a look at this area, take a broader view. It's all about customer context at the end of the day. Siloed operations and technology can create weak reporting and poor status control. We saw that in the customer onboarding example. That's really the key to case management. And look at the platforms. They combine advanced data visualization I talked about, management, analytics, and collaboration to help organizations serve customers. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and I think I went a couple minutes over, but hopefully that was enjoyable for some of you. Take care.
Thank you very much, Craig. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to some of the projects we're working on here at LIUNA. I've been the CIO at LIUNA for 5 years now, and we've experienced a lot of change in how we are approaching technology at the organization. So before we dive too deep into some of the technology changes, let me tell you a little bit more about our organization. LIUNA is one of the largest nonprofit building trade unions in the United States and Canada. We do not just represent construction workers. We represent public employees in states and municipalities. We represent healthcare workers, pipeline workers, maintenance and service contract workers, postal service mail handlers, and many other individuals. As you can see from the slides, our focus as an organization is on providing working-class Americans and Canadians with family-supporting pay, good benefits, and training and advancement opportunities. If any of you on here have driven on a major highway in the United States and Canada, I'm sure you've seen people working to repair our nation's bridges and roads. That's probably a laborer on the job. The way we look at our members is as our customers. I myself work at the International Union, and here we work with our local unions to support our members through advocacy programs, legislative affairs, organizing drives, and outreach, along with many other initiatives. We also have a number of affiliated funds that focus on the health and safety of our members, training our members so that they can get on a job, and supporting our partners in finding new work for our members. What we found with our legacy systems was that we lacked a single pane of glass to understand the member's history and experience with the organization. So as you could imagine, this would make advocacy initiatives quite difficult. So one of the things that was causing that lack of a single profile of our members was issues with the data itself. In our legacy systems, updates from our locals unions were coming in batches through a cumbersome process. This could delay how quickly our data was updated and slowed the time to resolve issues with the data sets we received. This data was also stored across a number of different systems, so with different sets of data being updated by different people. This would lead to security and access issues. Different departments within the organization could also be looking at different data sets across different systems, leading to data integrity issues. So this in itself could lead to miscommunication with our local unions and slow down our department's ability to engage our locals and our members effectively. The organization also suffered from a lack of digital engagement through our membership tools. As stated in the slides, real-time member engagement is the strength of any union. When our members are engaged, we can take on any issues. So in our legacy systems, we were dealing with data integrity issues that limited our ability to engage effectively. Furthermore, we have a mobile workforce, and our data was not available in a mobile or web accessible system, again, slowing down our ability to get things done for our members. So what have we done so far? We've begun the process of shutting down over 40 legacy systems, reducing the data silos in the organization while building a powerful membership record. One of the enhancements Appian had put into their solution early on in the process was the record functionality. We immediately saw the power of records. Our new member record is a single source of the truth for our member at the International. This gives us the ability to get a better idea of our members' history within the organization in one single place. It's also the record we plan to build on as we move forward, but I'll touch on that a bit more later. Appian has also given us the ability to integrate with external systems as we transition off of these legacy tools. So we can enhance our member records within Appian while methodically shutting down those other legacy solutions. A big area we're starting to explore right now is integrations with our legacy document and records management solution, enhancing our local union records as well as enhancing our membership records. Lastly, and probably most importantly, we now have a secure, mobile-friendly tool where our organization can interact with the International. Very shortly, we will be rolling out Appian sites to our locals and district councils to move towards the elimination of the flow of paper throughout the organization. So this presentation is titled Membership Management and Dynamic Case Management. Well, for us, the member record is really where that all starts to come into play. Through our member record and local record, we are giving different departments access to large data sets about the members that they are interacting with. And instead of spending their time sifting through a number of different systems to try and build a profile of that member, they can now do it all in one place. So what does that mean? That means when speaking to a member, you have a strong understanding of their history in the organization. It's also laid the foundation for us to build so much more on top of this record. Today, we're not tracking training and work history in the Appian solution. That's currently done at the local union level. However, as we bring the locals on board into the system more, we can expand the data we have access to and expand the picture of the member's experience. So through Appian Records, we're beginning the process of integrating all other external systems while working to replace many of them. We want to make sure all data about the member is available in this single solution. So some of the things we're working on now is we've begun the process of evaluating a possible CRM solution integrated directly into Appian to further enhance our member record. There's a lot about our members we simply don't know today, which could help drive engagement and add more depth to our understanding of our members. We're also looking to automate the processes of gathering more data about when our members are on the job and where they are working. We want to find a way to build the foundation necessary to get our members on the job faster while taking that laborious dispatching task away from the knowledge workers in the organization. Our leaders and knowledge workers want to focus on giving our members a better experience. So we plan to look at process automation to help make that happen. This feeds into the idea directly of self-service capabilities for our locals and our members. We are looking to remove any remaining paper-based processes and leveraging business rules and process automation capabilities to get locals and members the answers they need as quickly as possible. A key to the success of that process will be delivering these capabilities through a mobile device. Now, with all that being said, the not-so-subtle goal here is to free up our knowledge workers to focus on the things that really matter to our organization, making sure our members are getting the training they need, advocating for our members out in the field, and organizing more potential members, further growing the movement. So why did we choose Appian? When we began our initial engagement with Appian, our focus was on business process management. The idea was we have repeatable business processes with a set of specific defined business rules. Using Appian's low-code platform, we could transition off all of these legacy systems and move into a mobily enabled environment very quickly. We've since evolved into thinking about Appian Platform more as a dynamic case management tool. We're thinking about our strategy more along the lines of How can we add on tools and data sets quickly to deliver value to our members while freeing up our departments to focus on increasing member satisfaction instead of being bogged down on the mundane routine tasks? So having everyone leveraging Appian, we can also take advantage of making records available across the different business units of the organization. We can also leverage out-of-the-box functionality to track and assign tasks and responsibilities across the organization. We also chose Appian Cloud because we wanted to get the applications deployed quickly without having to worry about managing the environment itself. We've done all this with a team of only 4 developers. So dedicating someone to a full-time DevOps role simply wasn't an option. Along those same lines, we wanted to take advantage of AWS and Appian's built-in security tools. Appian's robust and, to sing their praises a little bit, awesome cloud team has been able to keep us up and running with no downtime. This has also allowed us to keep internal personnel and hardware costs to a minimum. So what are some of the things we're thinking about going forward now that we have this robust membership record in the system? Our members' journey starts at the moment they have an interaction with a union coworker, friend, or an organizer. And what we see is we need to start capturing that journey from the very first interaction. We're also looking at things around machine learning. To be honest, I'm still learning quite a bit about machine learning myself. But our team's starting to think about how we can understand what drives the churn through the organization by monitoring the patterns of our members' cycles in and out of the organization and how they engage on social media. Further to that point about social media, if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that social media is a key driver for engagement. Coming up with ways to push out information on social media platforms more efficiently will be a key to the success of future organizing drives, get out the vote efforts, and things of similar ilk. Lastly, we want to expand on our contractor records. It's our contractors, the government entities, and small businesses that we work with that hire our members. So the goal is to enhance that contractor record by taking in those external data sets and figuring out where they do business with our membership. We also want to make sure that our partners have a positive experience with our members and that we can get more of our members out on the job site by leveraging that positive experience. So with all that, I want to thank everyone for listening in on some of the things we're doing here at LIUNA. We feel that the solutions we're building here really incorporate Appian's approach of bringing together people, processes, and data. And with that, I will turn it back over to Malcolm.
Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Craig. That was a really insightful presentation by both of you. If you would like to ask a question of both Craig, Matt, or Appian and myself, I encourage you to go ahead, please submit those questions to us right now. As we conclude, we're going to take a look at the questions and see what we have built up. So it looks like the first question is for Craig, and specifically about dynamic case management work scenarios. So the question is, how is the future of the dynamic case management work scenarios impacted by emerging technologies? So we've seen technologies like robotic process automation, machine learning, being influenced as far as the work patterns and service request management, different types of case management scenarios. How are these bots and cognitive capabilities going to be best incorporated? Obviously, Matt just said he's exploring machine learning in the same context as well. Can you give us a little bit of some insights around the use case scenarios that we see these technologies applying?
Yeah, I certainly can. It's an area that really doing a lot of work in right now. And really, it's the future of of work. And I have looked more at if you look at let's take the working class jobs in the U.S. All right, there's 18 million. The biggest category are retail, food, and retail workers. After that, you have blue collar workers, which are 13 million or so. And that's been a declining category in the U.S. And then you have the caring workers, the ones that take care of your mom, and so forth. The area that I focus on are cubicle workers, because that's where, a lot of the technology we talk about, whether it's robotic process automation, whether it's RPA combined with AI, whether it's BPM and case management, we've been automating underneath those cubicle workers for some time. But there is going to be a tipping point where we're starting to see more intelligent digital workers, which are, a digital workforce is the concept now. Really came from the robotic process automation, surge that's going on in the market. To think of your workforce as being comprised of humans and digital workers, which are based on building bots. Nothing physical, but building bots that run as macros in servers that are doing the human keystrokes that your humans were doing, right? So that's the evolution. I see that the bot creation in the RPA is very complementary to case management and to BPM. In other words, if you think of your task map, you have queues and you have workers, humans that are working, pulling information from those queues and going through a process. There'll be bots that'll be doing more and more of that queue work. Now, the real question, or behind the question, is this tension around what are those 13, 15 million cubicle workers going to do? We're forecasting 4 million of them will be lost jobs to a digital workforce within 5 years. So where do those 4 million people go? What do they do? And so there's a dystopian scenario and a utopian scenario, and it depends on how you view the world. I tend to be a little bit dystopian in my views. I think that there's a significant change management issue that we're creating. We like to, be at tech conferences and talk about the latest technology, and everyone's kind of convincing themselves that this is good for everybody. You're taking the robot out of the human. But the reality is a lot of the people working in cubicles are not going to transition into positions of data science and algorithm development and cloud engineers and the new economy that's evolving. So there's going to be a big gap between those thrown out of the cubicles and those that can be absorbed. So there's going to have to be new roles. We're going to have to really create better training programs and professional categories for some of these workers that today we dismiss and provide very low self-esteem, particularly the caring class that are working to take care of people as we age. So there's a lot of work to do. I think it's going to be a gradual but a very painful transition. There's no stopping the relentless investment for robotics, robotic process automation, AI into the workforce. It's going to happen, and we just have to do the best we can to find true and legitimate ways to deal with the change management. Longer answer than you probably wanted.
Yeah, no, thanks, Craig. That's really insightful. I guess very appropriate that our other guest speaker is representing a labor union here as well, because it has massive impacts on the future of work and how we think about organizing our labor force. Yeah. So going over to Matt, I think the next question for you is around a little bit about your implementation. So first question for you, Matt, is can you talk about how easy or difficult it was to create member records inside your environment? So and can the record schema be changed by LIUNA decides if you want to add points? So it's that fluidity of membership data, and how do you kind of handle the change management as the types of information you're tracking about your members changes over time?
Absolutely, Malcolm. And this is actually a great question because it touches on a couple different points around the record functionality that I like to talk about. First, we're over 100-year-old organization. So when we were initially deciding how we're going to build out that member record, we've had a lot of past experience with what those data elements we wanted to capture were. The thing about that was, though, is we know what we need to capture today and what we capture today at the International. We needed to think about what do we want to capture in the future. So the beauty of the record functionality in Appian, is that it is truly easy to enhance that record within the system itself. But that being said, what we really wanted to do was look at how can we integrate with external systems and expose those other data sets right on the member record itself. So I touched a little bit on that we're looking at a CRM solution right now. So the way we see it is that there's going to be certain functionality we want to leverage through that CRM solution, whether it's functionality like text and email blasts and things like that. But we want our our back office workers to be able to be exposed to that data without necessarily having to go out to the CRM solution. So what you can do with an Appian record is you can then expose those external data sources right within the record screen itself. So what we're looking at is saying, hey, we may or may not use Appian to actually facilitate running a training center. Now, that might not make a lot of sense. There might be better tools to do that. But what's really important to me and to our team and to the organization is how do we then expose that information on the record back to the folks at the International and back to the folks that need it. So to answer your question, it's not very difficult to create a record, and we actually started with a lot of the requirements on front. And I think that we can really change and add the data points that we need in different ways. And one of the ways we think is the most powerful is the ability to integrate with those external systems and expose that data right within the record itself.
So we're getting a lot of questions also on this specific topic, Matt, for you. And the next one was about your choice to put your case management solution inside the cloud architecture. And if you could talk a little bit more about the concerns you had in moving membership data, financial data, other information inside of a cloud architecture, or what types of approaches you have in maybe a hybrid architecture you've taken to make sure you have that security on membership data as well as leveraging the power of cloud solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned in my presentation, we're not a huge staff here at the organization. There's 4 people, so security was very much a concern of ours, and we started thinking about how are we going to deal with that. So one of the things we wanted to take advantage of out of the box was Appian's built-in security through AWS. We've limited and locked down access to the data through either logging in directly through Appian or through a database that we store out in the AWS cloud that we connect directly into Appian's AWS environment. So what we've done is we've really limited the ability to get to that data unless you go through the Appian platform. So we're making the data available because we're making access to Appian available, but we're locking down really how people can get to it. Now, we try to keep a very limited amount of financial data in the system today. It's mostly membership data, so we're not as concerned about that, but by locking the system down in that way, we've been able to leverage Appian security to give us that more warm, comfortable feeling rather than trying to build something ourselves, if you will.
Yeah. Another question on the same theme of data we have was about gathering membership information. You mentioned in your presentation that you have a lot of data coming in maybe via batch or, at different times, serving a wide variety of different members. Do you do some automated account opening? Is there e-signature or document signature capabilities? How do you typically handle the inbound flow of information into that case solution?
Long answer, but I'll try to keep it short. Right now, that kind of initial account opening, if you will, which is essentially organizing a new member or organizing a new set of members, is happening at the local union level. So that process today is facilitated by the local unions using tools that they've either purchased or built on their own. So that's kind of current state, if you will. But what we have them do is we process that data directly through Appian through an upload process. What occurs there is then once the data comes in, we have Appian business rules that validate and check all that data so that anything that potentially is wrong or doesn't follow some of those business rules, our audit team can very quickly resolve those issues with the local union themselves. So we have a phased approach of what's next, right? The next step is directly integrate with those local systems. The third step is either replace those local systems with Appian or replace those local systems with a standardized system across the board. So our local unions are given a lot of autonomy to kind of do what they want on the technology standpoint today in specific ways, and sometimes that can be wrong. So what we do at Appian, leveraging all of the business rules around how we process that data, is we essentially cleanse it on the way in, and that's done on a monthly basis at minimum. But the next future step there is that instead of in the past where we do multiple sets of data at once, we're doing these kind of as real time as they bring in their accounts every month.
Awesome. And I think we have enough time for about one more question. And this question was about, you mentioned that you had a pretty small team doing the IT implementation work and that Appian's a low-code platform. So can you talk a little bit about how much time it took to overcome the learning curve with your internal developers and kind of get that production system in place after you made that decision to implement on Appian?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we decided to do is we sent all of our team to the Appian training on site in Virginia. And we have the luxury of doing that as well because we were only 10 miles away. After they conducted that 2-week training process, at the time that's what it was, we actually engaged Appian in a short-term engagement to make sure our team understood Appian's development approach. So that was about a 2 to 3 month project. At that point, our team has since taken over all of the development with limited to no outside services needed for our internal application development. So I would say our team was ready to start building applications after 3 weeks, but we took the extra step of saying, all right, come in, show us best practices for how to build an application in Appian and work with us side by side to build our first few applications. So we built some internal time off and onboarding based tools so that our team could kind of learn best practices and get used to the environment. But then from there, all of our membership management application was built internally.
That's great, and I think that's about all the major questions we had for today. So I'd like to send one final thank you to both Matt and Craig for sharing your insightful information today. If you do have any additional questions or would like to follow up with Appian, feel free to reach out to us at appian.com. You'll find a Contact Us form, free trials, other information about the overall Appian platform. And thank you so much for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.